Hello and welcome to another stage makeup tutorial. Today we are doing facial hair. I'm here with this lovely young man named Jonathan. He's going to be playing Buffalo Bill in Fort Lewis College's production of Buffalo Tricks. So make sure you go check that out. The audience for today's video, the audio rather, for today's video was really sketchy. So it's going to look like I'm talking to you and you're not going to be able to hear me. Don't worry, any important parts I will be doing voiceovers for, so let's get started. First thing you need to have is crepe hair. Crepe hair is a wool or synthetic-based product that comes in these lovely braids. Now, when they first come out of the braids, you'll see it has that sort of crimped, kinky texture, and that doesn't really work for most facial hair. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take a section and wet it, and then spread it out between 2 points. So tape both ends to a table, or put books or something heavy on top of both ends so that it is nice and long and not sort of, just in all those little braids. Now, there I just showed you I have so many colors of crepe wool. Now, hair itself is not just one color. We have various colors in our hair. If it was all just one color, it would look really flat and it wouldn't have any dynamic qualities. So we want to give facial hair the same quality as regular hair. And so we mix at least 2, preferably 3 to 5 colors together. You would have your main color, and that would make up the majority of your hair, and then you would have 1 to 4 other colors mixed in. For his hair, because I'm following the research image, which looks like this, I'm going to use a very dark brown, a reddish brown, and a little bit of gray, just to give it a little bit of brightness and something for the light touch. From that research image, we also get the general length of the facial hair. Here, I'm measuring it on him. Now, I'm going to cut this much longer, well, not much longer, but a bit longer than what the end product is going to be. This is because when we shape it and we mold it and we style it, we're going to cut more off. So if we're cutting it right now to the shape that we need or the length that we need, it's going to be really short later. Now we start the process of blending the colors together. So the first way I do this is to take and just divide the whole section in half and put it back together and divide it in half. Now this works, but it's really slow. With these larger pieces of hair, what you can do is use a brush them together, then collect the stray strands that are still in the brush and put them back with their friends in your hand. Now this is a much faster method. I find that it works better as well. The only problem with this method is you do need longer pieces of hair to do it. If you're working with really short pieces, it becomes incredibly difficult because then they all end up in your brush. Here I am pulling out a bit of the just sections that don't necessarily want to come apart, the little bits of colorful crepe hair that want to stick together in clumps. I'm also adding in a bit more of the reddish brown, just because there was a little bit too much of the other colors in there. You can see even with this being sped up, though, that it is still a very long process. You do need to schedule a bit of time for this project. It's not one that you can throw together last minute. Now I've got it all nice and blended together, and we're ready for the next step of our facial hair. Now, Jonathan already has a little bit of facial hair growing in. He said he shaved yesterday, and what he has is just sort of what he's grown since then. Now, this liquid latex is incredibly sticky, and if you do get it on any sort of facial hair, it will pull and it will hurt. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in with this stick of just regular glue, and we are going to glue his facial hair, which I know sounds really weird, but really it just gives a nice coating, thick coating over each of the pieces of facial hair so that the liquid latex doesn't stick to it. Now I'm going down with the facial hair and going up against it so that all sides are covered with glue. This is a safety precaution. Now's a good time to also say that all the procedures of sharing makeup are being put in place. I'm not going to be putting anything on Jonathan's face that has been previously used. Here I have this ginormous bottle of liquid latex that I bought from Walmart after Halloween, which is an excellent time to get your makeup, last year. Now, because it's not opened, it does have an extended shelf life. As soon as I bust the sucker open, I'm going to need to use it within probably a year. Otherwise, it starts to get sort of congealed in there and won't work as properly. So I'm going to pour that liquid latex that has never been used onto a plate and then use my brush, which is also clean and disinfected, and I haven't used it for over a year, and it was clean before it was put away. There's no chance of that getting germs from my face or anyone else's face onto Jonathan's face. And I'm going to paint from the latex on the plate. If I need more latex on the plate, I will pour it from my bottle, and therefore there will be no cross-contamination from my face to the latex to Jonathan's face to the latex. It all is very clean. Now I'm going to actually start putting the latex on Jonathan's face. We did not do a latex check to see if he was allergic before this, which we should have done. You just put that latex right on the inside of the wrist and you wait about 10 minutes and see if there's a reaction. Thankfully, Jonathan is not allergic. I'm painting it on in the direction that his facial hair is naturally laying. This is so that it'll lay on top of the strands of hair, it won't surround them, and when we go to take it off later, it won't be as painful. You want to start putting on your latex further out than the actual facial hair is going to be by about 1/4 of an inch. This is so that you get a nice, if we were doing sewing, it would be called seam allowance, but a nice little area between the edge of the latex and the facial hair so that when you go to put it on and take it off over and over again, you don't start actually ripping off pieces that have the hair in it because it will start to degrade over time. Depending on how many times you're going to use this particular piece of facial hair is how many layers you're going to want to put on of the liquid latex before you actually start applying the crepe hair. Jonathan's planning on using this piece of facial hair throughout all of the rehearsal cycle and then making another one for the performances. So this has to last him a long time. We're therefore going to put between 5 and 7 layers of latex on his face to build up a nice thick foundation for that hair to set in. This will just make it last longer. It'll be more durable. You do keep the very outer parts of the facial hair fairly thin, only putting 2 to 3 layers out that far because we do want it to blend into the face. If you carry on that really thick foundation of latex all the way over, then you get sort of a shelf, right? When you put it on your face, there's going to be a difference between where the latex lays and where your actual skin starts. You do want to start thinning it out towards the edges, but definitely where the facial hair sits, you want a nice thick foundation. Now, if you're only going to use this facial hair once, then 2 layers of latex is absolutely fine. Once we have a nice thick foundation of liquid latex on the face, we're going to actually start adding our facial hair. So I'm checking and making sure the length is just a little longer than what I need of my blended facial hair with all 3 of those colors that I used. Now, when we're putting the facial hair on the face, it's important not to go overboard with it. If you take just a little 1 inch by 1 inch square of anyone's facial hair, and you look through it, you'll see that it's not solid hair. It's not like a hair follicle is coming out right next to the hair follicle next to it. There is space between. So you don't want to overload your facial hair. Otherwise, it starts looking really bushy and it starts going a little crazy. Um, Facial hair is much thinner than what you think it is. There, I'm showing you how it would come out from your face if you were to make it really thick. So we're actually going to be using fairly small sections of facial hair. This section that I have here is actually just a little bit too big, which ended up being okay because we ended up having a lot of fallout from the beard, meaning pieces of facial hair actually coming out once we brush it through really gently. And fallout is fine. You don't really, need to get too upset about fallout because again, making facial hair look thin, um, not too thin, but normal amount thin is going to make it look more realistic. Once you get your section of hair that you are going to work with, you want to make sure that they're all roughly the same length. So you line up the tops pretty well, and you can do that just through what I was doing there and taking the long pieces out, the ones that are dropped down too far, taking them out and then lining them back up at the top. Now, when we go to cut the ends off, because you are going to want to make them even, we're going to do it not straight across. Think of a cucumber. If you cut a cucumber perpendicularly to the length of the cucumber, you get what are called rounds. Now, this round is the only surface area we have. But if you cut the cucumber diagonally, the slices come out to be these elongated ovals. That makes a much larger surface area, and that's what we want to do for the pieces of hair. We want to cut them on a diagonal so that the ends are oval shaped and therefore have more area to stick to the liquid latex. And here you can see the process of cutting the hair on the diagonal. You just take your scissors and you keep it at an angle to the hair, not perpendicular, but sort of sideways, and you come out with a diagonal cut. After we have cut the crepe hair on the diagonal, it is time to actually attach it to the face. We do this starting with the least accessible spot, which is going to be right underneath his chin, right in the center. Now, once we attach the hair to that spot, we're going to start moving upward and out in little half circles as it comes over his chin and sort of up towards his lip. Now, as we go, if this was a full face piece, we would then crawl upwards towards his nose to connect the beard to the mustache. And as we do that, we would change the angle that the hair is laying at. It would be coming straight down from the nose over the lip in the center. And then as you work out to the outside, it goes into more and more of a diagonal angle because this is the way that hair naturally grows. And since he's going to need to style it, and most mustaches will need to be styled. By doing it at a diagonal on the outside, it helps it curl a little better. It helps it get it away from the corners of the mouth. So you can see there, I just put a little dab of the liquid latex right up under his chin in that least accessible spot. And now I'm holding the crepe hair about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch away from the ends. Now I am not shoving it up into the latex with my fingers. My fingers never come into contact with the latex or his face. It's important to hold the hair back a little ways and then press the ends up into the latex and never actually take your finger to shove them up there. This is because instead of coming straight down like they're coming out of the face, they'll start getting stuck sideways where you've pressed your finger. And then they start going at weird angles and it looks really matted and really gross and it doesn't look natural at all. Once I've got that center section done, I'm starting to go around the center section in circles. Now, what you can't see very well in this video is that you don't take the hair in that tiny little clump that you've made and then just stick it there in clumps. Otherwise, it starts looking like the hair grows in clumps. You can see the two that are sort of sticking out of his chin right now look like separate clumps of hair stuck together. It's not so important there under the chin because it's very unlikely that he'll tip his head far back enough for an extended period of time for the audience to see that. But definitely, as you move upwards on the chin towards the front of his face, fan out the hair that you have in your hand. Make it not just a little clump. Fan it out, give it some distance between the follicles, and then attach it to the face. This just looks more natural. It looks less clumpy. It looks less like he ate something and it got stuck in his hair and clamped it together. It just is a better look overall. Um, I'm going to speed up this portion because it takes such a long time. This entire unedited video lasted about an hour and 15 minutes, and as you'll see, we don't even get done with the whole facial hair at the end. So again, this does take a bit of time. I am going to speed up the next 15 or so minutes into a much smaller area of time for your viewing pleasure, but please understand that this whole process takes such a large amount of time. This isn't something that you can just slap together at the last minute. It takes preparation, it takes planning, and the actual application of the facial hair is a big endeavor. Keep this in mind as you go. So as you can see with the amounts of hair that I'm pulling out, as we go up the face, we're getting less and less hair. That's because hair naturally grows much thicker underneath the chin and along the jawline, and then it gets sparser and sparser as we move up the cheeks and towards the sideburns. Walk around break. Because this is such a long process, it's important to let you or whoever is sitting in the chair take a break every now and then. If you do happen to have any little places where the hair, you missed a spot or you have any little blank places, um, like I have a couple in his beard, there's only a few that stand out more than others. What you want to do is grab a piece, small, very small pieces of that hair to fill those in. Now, this is a slightly different technique, and you only use this technique to fill in. Please do not use this technique over the whole beard. It's messy, the hair clumps together weirdly, it's just no good. But for filling in little holes, it's perfectly acceptable. So we're going to take that small section, we're still going to cut it on the diagonal, that's what we like. But instead of applying the liquid latex to the face and then pushing the hair into it, we're actually going to apply it to the ends of the hair itself. Now, once you do this, this hair really does want to stick together. So this is why we don't do it to the whole face. But you can see it's just barely on the ends. We try not to get it too clumpy so that it falls down into the hair. But then you take it and you apply it right where you want it. You can try to fan it out once you've got it on the face. It is a little more difficult this way, but it can be done, and a good way to fill in your holes. It is at this point that I'm going to start working on the mustache. Now, if this was a connected goatee situation where the beard went up into the mustache first, then I would just continue moving on from the beard all the way up. But as it is, we get a short break between where the beard ends and the mustache begins. Now, do remember when you're doing the mustache to angle out when it gets to the side of the mouth. Don't go straight down. You're going to start with that nice diagonal angle and then work your way, as you work your way up the lip to the center, then you'll go straight down. We also are leaving these hairs rather long and style them later. And then please don't do really thick clumps for the facial hair. It's going to start looking real walrusy. It's going to start sticking out crazy. Do very small sections of hair for the mustache. I promise it'll look better. It'll look more natural, and it won't look really funny and comical if you do it the correct way rather than just taking a lot of hair all at once and putting it on. You can see here that I'm taking some scissors and I'm clipping pieces that are trying to crawl up his nose. This isn't for anything other than the fact that I don't want him sneezing the whole time he's in the show. Now I'll start using the method where you put the liquid latex on the ends of the crepe hair themselves to start filling in those little spots there on his mustache that I missed. You can tell poor Jonathan at this point is getting a little antsy. And at this point, he'd sat for almost an hour total. So again, I can't stress too enough that this is a long process. If you're doing it for someone, make sure they know that they'll be sitting for a long time. If you're doing it for yourself, make sure you schedule out a nice, healthy chunk of time in order to devote to this process. It helps to have some water for some hydration nearby, maybe a little snack, and like I said, a lot of time. And if you're doing it for someone else, they can also watch a little bit of TV or some videos on their phone while you do it, anything to help them pass the time because the person sitting has nothing to do except for sit there. So, as kind as you can be to them, the better. At this point, the beard has now cured enough that I can pull on it slightly, and that's how I know that it is ready for me to start shaping and zhuzhing. Um, Now, usually it would be at this point that I would take a hairbrush and very gently comb out the beard. This would help it because you'll get a lot of fallout that way. Any of those loose hairs that didn't quite make it into liquid latex would come out on your brush, um, and that would be good. It would thin out the beard a little bit, which it needs at this point. Um, but we'd already been sitting there for a really long time, and I wanted to make sure Jonathan got on his way quickly. So I went straight to the cutting. He can always brush it out later when he goes to reapply. I'm looking at my research image, and it looks like Buffalo Bill's beard gets cut pretty much right at mid-throat length. So I'm just going to do a horizontal cut at the bottom. Um, Now, this is the only time we're going to horizontal cut is when making that very first cut, and I'm cutting it anywhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch longer than the finished beard length will be. Don't ever horizontal cut at the length that you want. You always want a horizontal cut longer because those horizontal cuts don't look natural at all. You'll want to fix it. Once I've got the beard just a little bit longer than its finished length is going to be, I'm going to go in with upward, so vertical chopping motions to shorten and shape it. Looking at my research image, Buffalo Bill's beard is a little rounded on the side, so if I go in with upward cutting motions just like this, I can shape it and give it that rounded look. I can also shorten it. Now these vertical cuts are going to give a little bit of varied length, excuse me, to the bottom of the hair. It's going to make it look much more natural. Blunt cuts, especially on facial hair, just don't look natural at all. Here you can see I'm pulling out some of those loose hairs that would be pulled out with the brushing that I mentioned earlier. Here I'm just doing a little bit by hand because I noticed a bit of fallout as I was working. Again, fallout is normal. Don't worry about it too much. Now, if your beard is getting really thin with the fallout, you might want to go back in with that method of putting the liquid latex on the ends of the hair itself to reapply in areas. Just make sure that you don't get any latex on the pre-existing hair. Otherwise, it'll clump up and look all sorts of crazy. But here I'm doing some more horizontal cutting, more shaping, getting it to look like the finished product. With the beard more or less shaped at this point, I'm going to go ahead and move over to that side of the mustache. We're not actually going to get to the other side today. Jonathan is going to go home and try doing that on his own at home since he'll need to do it for the actual production and he needs the practice. So right now I'm looking at my research image. The mustache on the research image goes pretty straight across through for most of the width from the center to the side of the mouth, pretty straight across, loops over right over the upper lip, pretty indicative of the mustaches of the time. And then it gets much longer there on the outer corners so that it can flip and sort of turn outward. So I am making a horizontal cut at the longest length, not the shortest, but the longest. And then I'm going to go in with those horizontal cuts and shorten and shape as I go, just like we did for the beard. You can see as I'm making these vertical cuts, I'm keeping 2 fingers behind the facial hair, between the facial hair and his lip. This is to make sure that I'm only cutting the hair and I'm not cutting him. Very important that you do this when you're putting this sort of facial hair on other people. When you're doing it to yourself, there's no real way to Make sure that you're not cutting you except for feeling the distance between the scissors and your face. So please do be careful with that. And this is as far as we're getting to on this Buffalo Bill look today. Um, we needed to get Jonathan up and out, and I was starting a class, so this is where we're ending it. But Jonathan's going to continue. He's going to do the other side on his own because he will need to do this for the production. Now, when he's going through and styling it, he can use some gel or some pomade and a small comb to sort of curl that mustache under over his upper lip like we talked about and do the nice little turn out on the outside. He can take a brush or a comb and gently brush through to take more of the fallout out, especially if once he gets on stage it's reading as too fake. You can even, with this wool-based crepe hair, use a low temperature iron to curl it. But there's so much more you can do with this. Zhuzh to your heart's content. Now to take it off, you're going to use spirit gum remover and a Q-tip. Go ahead and soak the Q-tip in the spirit gum remover. You'll rub it along the outsides of the facial hair piece until you get a little bit of an upturn, until it loosens up. You'll then start slowly prying it off the face using the Q-tip to go under it with the spirit gum to loosen it from the skin and the hair so that it doesn't hurt. I hope that this tutorial has been helpful for you. Thank you once again, Jonathan. You're a real trooper, and we will see you next time. Bye.